Welcome back to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Make sure you smash that thumbs up on this video and click that subscribe button below. Appreciate your support. Follow me right there at Jake Brown Live. Subscribe to my YouTube and follow me on X, Instagram, and Twitter. Not a ton of updates in Mets land, but Cody Bellinger's latest is that the Yankees have changed their offer a little bit to Bellinger, which affects the Mets, obviously, if the Mets are not able to get Kyle Tucker. Now, listen, Kyle Tucker's first priority. I think that's the guy you want in his prime, who is a winner, who is a elite hitter to add in the middle of your order, good defensive player. Bellinger makes a lot of sense, but now you're seeing with the price with Bellinger, is it worth it? You know, the Yankees was 5 years, 155, 160. They've changed it to include less deferrals, potential opt-outs, and a nice signing bonus. So that's the Yankees' latest offer. So 5 for around 160 with a signing bonus with a potential opt-out. Now, we don't know much more than that, but that's what we know. And, you know, the reality is the Mets aren't going to go there. The Mets are not going to 5 years. You know, I'm sure the Mets would want deferrals. I'm sure they would do a signing bonus, but I don't know if the Mets are going to match that number. And to me, as much as I do like Cody Bellinger, I would have to agree with the Mets if they don't. I just think that's hitting insane numbers. And while Bellinger's a good player, he has had some years he's been just brutal. He's had some incredible years, he's had good years, and he's had some bad years mixed in. Now, you never know. That could be where he was. It could be injuries. It could be whatever the case may be. But to me, Kyle Tucker on a short-term deal is the deal the Mets want. And I would think the deal the Mets really try to go for. And when you factor in Kyle Tucker, you got to remember that relationship with Troy Snitker, Mets hitting coach. That had to factor in. Snitker, Tucker know each other from Houston. They've talked, I'm sure, in these conversations when the Mets met with Kyle Tucker. And if the Mets get him, it's going to be money, of course, but I think Snitker's going to play a part in the Mets landing Kyle Tucker if they do. You know, a name that no one's mentioned. We've talked about Bellinger. We've talked about Tucker. We've talked about Framber and Suarez. We haven't mentioned Zac Gallen. You know, I get it. It's not an exciting name. I don't think Zac Gallen, if the Mets sign him, you're going to say to yourself, oh, my God, I love David Stearns. You're probably going to say Sleepy Stearns. But just looking this morning as I'm here I'm at a janky, kind of a janky Marriott in Long Island City, but love being back in New York. My 3 days, I'm here every week. Just looking at Zac Gallen's numbers this morning. A guy from New Jersey, by the way. You know, Zac Gallen, yes, he had a bad ERA this year, but if you want to talk about innings eaters and guys who have been reliable for a majority of their career, you can't look much further than Zac Gallen. I mean, Zac Gallen's got a 3.58 career ERA in 7 years. He is 30 years old. He is still in his prime. He is not old. He's not in his mid to late 30s. He's just turned 30 in August, so this will be his age 30 season for the most part. And yeah, he had a 4.83 ERA, but 33 starts, 192 innings. The year before, 28 starts, 3.65 ERA. And the 2 years prior to that are what I think the Mets are hoping, if they were to go after Zac Gallen, what they would get. And I get it's a couple of years ago, but again, he's not old. His career's not over. I would think he's got something left in the tank. Depending on the price, I would think Gallen is someone the Mets are talking to. John Morosi had reported last week that he sees the Mets and Orioles as favorites to land him. So we got to talk about it. You know, Gallen's 2022, 2023 seasons are what the Mets would aim for. 2023, Zac Gallen threw 210 innings. That's the bulldog the Mets kind of need on the mound. Even the 192 he threw in 2025, that's bulldog mentality. Again, ERA wasn't good. ERA can get inflated by a couple of just stinkers and bad starts where you give up 8 runs in an inning. But, you know, if the Mets can get that version of 2022, 2023 Zac Gallen, 2.54 ERA in 2022 with 184 innings, 3.47 with 210 innings, 34 starts in 2023. If they get 33, 34 starts and 200 innings and say a 3.7, 3.8 ERA from Zac Gallen, the Mets will sign up for that every day of the week. So he's only been to the playoffs once, so that's a little bit concerning when you're talking about building this winning roster. He only made the playoffs with the Diamondbacks in 2023. Obviously, the magical year for Arizona that year. So he had 6 starts, 4.54 ERA. So he pitched okay, not great in the playoffs that year. But I got to think that's a under-the-radar name that we aren't talking about. Remember I said that the Mets are probably going to end up with a name that we didn't even mention on the show. He would be the one. So I want to mention him because if he's on him, I want to make sure that we talked about him. And I think he is a guy that is realistic. If the Mets say, you know what, Framber's price tag is nuts, Suarez's price tag is nuts, let's get Gallen for 2 years and $50 million. Now it might be more than that. I'm sure he's asking for more than that. But if that's what it came down to for Zac Gallen, I'd be fine with it. I'd live with the Mets signing Zach. Like if the Mets said, all right, we're signing Kyle Tucker, Zac Gallen, and I'll say it again, trading for Yandy Diaz. I'm all in. We'll see. All right, let's respond to your comments from Monday's Mets Daily. Keep on hitting that subscribe, keep smashing that thumbs up, and keep commenting. We appreciate your support. From KHUR51, hey Jake, I have a little tidbit to share. Ooh. I don't do this often. My relative has some peeps that are insistent that the Mets are not trading Vientos for anything. Take it for what it is. Also, they feel like the absolute frontrunners for Tucker after he met with Snitker this past Thursday. Interesting. Now, listen, we have no idea who KR51 is. We appreciate you watching Mets Daily and being a part of the Mets Daily family, of course. No idea who you are. So we don't know if this is made up or not, but we'll take it what it is. It would be a bizarre thing to comment randomly out of the blue. It's the internet, so you just never know. But if it's true, then that's great. And, I mentioned Snitker. I do think Snitker's going to play a part. So now, I think the only reason they wouldn't trade Vientos for anything because I don't think Vientos has any value this offseason. I think his value has gone way down with the year that he had. I think if you traded Vientos after his 2024 season, I think you would have got a lot for him. Not a lot, but you would have been able to get a starting pitcher or been able to get a decent piece. Now I think Vientos is part of any package. I don't think Vientos himself is really getting you anything of note. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they traded Vientos because if Polanco's playing a lot of first base on this roster right now, if the Mets don't add a DH, Mark Vientos is your DH. So if opening day was today, Mark Vientos is your DH. And as much as I said in every package, like the Mets should include Vientos, you think about it now, like it's either him or Mauricio. I would think the Mets go with Vientos as their DH if they don't have. So wouldn't shock me if they didn't trade him, but I think the best bet for the Mets is trading him. Love, you get the two opposite worlds of comments on here. You get Kiss 1975. I'm glad you aren't in charge. Nice Kiss. Jake says, Sproat for a rental should be off the table. He looks promising. Yeah, listen, Sproat for Peralta is not just any rental. Peralta's an ace. So I'm not trading Sproat maybe for Yandy Diaz, but I would think Sproat for a Peralta would make sense. Although I would trade Sproat for Diaz because I love Yandy Diaz. Speaking of Yandy Diaz, Sal Capello says, speaking to the choir on Yandy's perfect for our lineup. Type of hitter that brings tremendous balance to it. Get Tucker and trade for Yandy is a win in my book. Yeah, that's the duo to me. The Mets talk about a righty that can play first base. Bingo, Yandy Diaz. Now, listen, we have no idea if the Rays are trading him. I've mentioned that. There's no report out there that says the Rays are definitely trading Yandy Diaz. They may want to keep him, and I wouldn't blame them. But if I'm the Mets, I'm saying to myself, what can it take to get it done? We've made deals with the Rays before. The Mets and Rays make deals. We'll eat every last dollar of Yandy's contract. Maybe we'll throw in a little money. There's got to be a way to sweeten the deal and get it done. Edward Wohl says he can go to the Mets on a short-term deal, opt out after a great season, go back to free agency with a better established record, no chance to get a bigger contract just like Bregman did. Yeah, that's the allure to Tucker coming to the Mets. And everyone's like, why wouldn't he go to Toronto? Why wouldn't he? Now, there's reports saying, and listen, there's a new report every day, so take it with a grain of salt, that the Blue Jays, it seems less likely that he would go there. So if that were the case, it would be down to the Mets and Dodgers. Now, he would probably obviously choose the Dodgers if it was same money, but who knows? That's a good point. He didn't have a great year in 2025. I pointed to the fact that Jorge Polanco in some categories had a better year than Kyle Tucker. So could Tucker say to himself, you know what? I'll bet on myself. I'll do 3 years, $120 million like Alex Bregman with an opt-out after year one. Now, there's the whole thing of the Mets lose the draft pick if he opts out after year one. You can't think about draft picks right now. I know a lot of people do. This is the baseball draft. It's not the NBA, and there's 2 rounds. You have 2 picks. You can't think about the stupid draft pick. And I get it, draft picks, Mike Hampton had a draft pick turning into David Wright. I understand, but that's not how you operate a baseball team, is thinking about, when you make a trade that you're going to lose a pick. You think about making your team better, and Kyle Tucker makes the Mets better. So 3 for 120 with an opt-out after year one. I think makes sense for the Mets because they could evaluate Carson Bench. Listen, if Bench comes up here and tears the cover off the ball and he's great, you say to yourself, all right, we'll lose Tucker. We'll get a lesser outfielder, play the other position. We have Soto. We have Bench who looks great. So it allows the Mets to evaluate their youth with a potential opt-out. Now, Tucker would have to be willing to go back and do this again next offseason, which, remember, is potential lockout. So, I would think the opt-out after a year 2 makes more sense for a lot of these guys just for the sake in case there's an lockout next year. KRS says Tucker price tag is too high. It's too much for a short-term player. I would agree with salary penalties. I'd be more willing to pay for a 5 to 7 year contract, 29-year-old elite all-around player. Yeah, but the Mets aren't going to give 5 to 7 years. If they do, then God bless them. XX Nike Elite Gaming says, I don't like trading Acuna. It's been doing well this offseason. Maybe he's broken out. Can't afford another PCA trade. Yeah, I don't know if the Mets love Acuna. That's the thing. I'm not positive that the Mets are obsessed with Acuna, the player and the person. So we'll see. We'll do one more comment because I got to go in a second here. Let's do... Walter said you get paid for this parrot stuff. What does that mean, parrot stuff? Let's do... Sal Capello says, why is Boston so desperate to move Durant? It seems like they've been trying to move a couple of years. I'd stay away. Yeah, I mean, that's the alarming thing, and I mentioned it. Like, is he a clubhouse fit? Is he a clubhouse issue? We don't know that they're trying to trade him. Like, again, these are all just rumors, and again, take everything with a grain of salt. Like, it's not a lock that the Red Sox want to trade Durant. They haven't. I'm sure they've gotten offers, but they haven't done it yet. So, I also think they have a lot of young talent. So when they think about, all right, is Durant part of our long-term plans? We have Rafaela, we have Willie Abreu, we have Mayer, we have Roman Anthony playing a factor. So it's also a fact of, hey, we have a lot of this young talent. Like, is Durant factor into that? In 3 years, are we giving him a deal? Should we just get what we can, a great return for him now before we let him go in a couple of years and we use our young talent? That's what they're thinking. Smash that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe. Keep on following us, folks. We'll have Ashley from Why Am I a Mets Fan Pod joining us later in the week on Friday. We're looking forward to having her back on the show. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go Mets. Let's make a damn move. I'm getting tired of talking about Tucker and Bellinger. Can they just sign already? Let's go Mets. Thanks for watching. Mets Daily. We'll talk to you tomorrow.